We are in despair. Our hearts are filled with doubt and dark clouds. Every time it rains in our hearts, it pours through our eyes. They fed our ears with lies and our minds with false hope. They promise change, but we no see one kobo. There's still trouble here. We're still suffering and struggling here. We're still living in fear. But when it's time for election, they'll send ballot boxes everywhere, but there's still no development here. They don't care about us. They call us lazy youth. Not only phones we sabi press. They don't like our hairstyle or how we dey dress. We be criminal, useless Indomie generation where no get sense. We no even get respect, but now we be the town crier where no they tire. We no go look their face this time. Bushmates don't catch the hunter. They expect us to just adapt to the crooked system and die in silence. They want us scared on our knees, broken and twisted like a piece of hand laundry. And if we scream change, they'll send ruthless thugs and bullets to stop us, to kill us, because they fear us. But we are fed up. We can't be silent anymore. The resistance is us. We are fearless. We will risk everything and protest every day. Our voices must be heard. We want change.
Policymakers, world-renowned experts, international economists, and world-class entertainers, record-label bosses, and managers. I am proud and happy to be in the presence of such a person. Chinenye is a recipient of several awards, including the Social Impact Award from the Vice President of Nigeria, Professor Chinenye Uwanaka, SAN, for her efforts in improving access to justice for the less privileged and pro bono legal aid in Nigeria. She has also been recognized as a mentor by the Young Lawyers Forum Nigerian Bar Association Abuja branch. A round of applause to the well-seasoned speakers today for our session of the Policy Roundtable, and I would like to formally invite them to come over for our session. A round of applause as they come.
Because there's a mistrust. People do not trust government, and you can't blame us for not. Because when you've been lied to and abused over and over again, there's that mistrust. So I believe that, when I look back at the whole protest, even though I'm sad that people died, I still think that there were lots of wins. I don't think it was an exercise in futility. I think that really now the youth are really emboldened. They know that their voices count. That we are actually the majority. We own this country, but we're made to feel like we're weak and we don't have a say. But we can actually determine who rules us, who becomes president, what happens. Because government was really, and you can see now a lot of initiatives are being launched. They're trying to appease the youth. So this showed that the youth are powerful. The youth can coordinate. The youth can mobilize, and it's not over yet. It's not over yet, and that's why even platforms like this and other platforms are very important to keep the conversation going.
Thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
Our Professor Ngubo, and then she has joined us. She is the Head of Law at the University of Bradford. Welcome, Professor. The conversation is getting very interesting, but before we move on, I have to introduce another of our panelists that joined us. We have Barrister Phillip Olubakin came to join. You're very welcome.
Thank you very much.
So, just to help you catch on our discussion, we've spoken about why the protest started, about the fundamental right of starting a protest like that. We've spoken about how we debated whether it got hijacked or it got attacked. And now we just spoke about if the protest should have had an end game, or more like there should have been pauses in between for the government to meet some of the demands. So next, I would like the media team to please display some of the demands that were made by the ENDSARS protest. It was called 5 for 5 demands. Okay, so the question is, what do you think about the 5 demands of the ENDSARS movement?
The 5 demands, right.
Yeah.
I think talking about the 5 demands, I mean, at the time I read quite a lot about it in the papers, where some people felt they didn't go far enough and others felt it was an overreach, and that it has extended beyond ENDSARS to wider demands around governance. And personally, I think that always ENDSARS was a trigger. ENDSARS was a trigger that spoke to concerns among Nigerian youth about the route and the path that the Nigerian state was going, in the sense that they felt disenfranchised, in the sense that they did not feel like they were part of the Nigerian body politic, in the sense that they did not feel like government was accountable to Nigerians and to the Nigerian youth. And to that extent, it is understandable that once they got the ear of the government through ENDSARS and the government was listening, that they would begin to articulate what their core demands were. And personally, I don't think that any one of those demands was an overreach, because none of it was beyond what should be the basic fundamentals of any functioning state. One, that the Nigerian police force in and of itself should be properly trained, that policemen should be properly remunerated, that the government, the organs of state should be accountable to the people, that the huge amounts that were being paid to the Nigerian, to those who had left office in Nigeria was, still in my mind, completely unreasonable at a time when we cannot sustain, if you like, the basics in our body politic. We have one of the highest youth unemployment rates in the world, and we have a country that has over 60% of the population as the youth. But for me, I think that, yes, in some sense, people would say, well, you started ENDSARS, and the government said they were going to disband SARS. Why didn't you stop there? And perhaps these other demands were over which no government was ever going to do this. But let's take a step back and think. What did Mandela demand in South Africa? They demanded that the power, the white authority, should share government with black people. That was the demand. What was the demand of the civil rights movement? The demand was that you should take away and dismantle all of the Jim Crow rules so that blacks will be equal in the true sense of the word with whites in America. So what was the demand in the post-colonial, in the colonial times? What was Nkrumah and Nnamdi Azikiwe demanding? They were demanding that the colonial power should step down and give back power. So how can we say that merely asking for accountability is an overreach? So personally, I believe that those demands were very well thought out, very well made. Will the government actually accede to all of them in the first instance? Of course not. I did not ever think the government was necessarily going to announce and say, yes, we're going to actually give everything to you. But I think it should have formed the basis for a true conversation, and I think still should form the basis of a true conversation in the Nigerian state, because these are the issues. SARS is a symptom. The reason why the elite police unit in the Nigerian police force behaves the way it does is because there are wider underlying issues that need to be addressed. And these are issues that are decades long, as long as we've had these problems. And therefore, if we're to actually deal with SARS, it goes beyond disbanding SARS. And the Nigerian state has shown it. Because what have they done? they say we disbanded SARS, now we brought out a new unit, it's called SWAT. Why is SWAT going to be any different from SARS? Renaming the unit isn't the issue. The bigger governance issues around corruption, issues around training, issues around remuneration, issues around police accountability, those tie in very much to the structural issues of the Nigerian state.
Thank you very much for that.
Technological advancement will always shatter the boundaries of states. Those of you from the background of the history, you know that the Westphalian state system has been shattered. State boundaries no longer exist. State boundaries no longer exist. So with social media, you can know what's happening in any other part of the world. It's unfortunate. This is what we have to live with. We can't stop it. So it was the social media that enabled people all over the world to see what was happening in Nigeria. They didn't have to go through ATA or state control, just there. So what we do is good. But we want, you know, for everything that is good, there's also the bad side of it. So when some people construct certain things and talk about you, what you haven't done, that's what we say in intelligence. When the falsehood is 1,000 kilometers away, truth is just putting on the shoes. You're never gonna catch. You're never gonna catch. So social media helped you people. Government didn't have a way to control it, and that was why you had this massive support. But most importantly, I want to ask, the root of the whole thing was poor governance. So I'm old enough to know I marched on that Independence Day, October 1, 1960. I was in primary school in Enugu, and I marched on that safety. It was a wonderful event. We had all hopes. But after 60 years, and I'm very sorry, I don't think about us more than there is hope for you young people. Therefore, governance must take a very important position. Like the English philosopher John Locke said, those elected into political appointments are holding fiduciary power on behalf of the people. The fiduciary power is power and trust. When they do not do well, what did he say? Vote them out. That's it. Another one said, J. Stuart Mill said, the greater number of goods to the greater number of people. Now we're having the greater number of goods to the fewer number of people. The system must find a way to accommodate these young people with capability and all those things for us to move forward. Young people are doing well throughout the world, and Nigeria should be. And I encourage you that you must follow the friendship trend so that we can arrive to where we want to be. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, I would like to come back to that question for all the panelists. But I have a very important. Now, let us talk about a quick rundown of how the protest went. The protest started 7th of October. It started at Lekki, then Abuja, Takot. I think it was in Moria as well. It was in the southwestern states. It was, especially in lots of the southern states, yeah. And then there were times where protesters had issues with the police. There were tear gas. I knew that at police they tear gassed the protesters. They arrested protesters. But then a lot of things also happened in Obunosho. In Obunosho, they started shooting at protesters, and unfortunately, a bystander, Isaka, was caught in the gunfire and he died. And then that also escalated because then people, let's say, attacked the other palace there, and then there was a video where bodies were actually moved out of the palace. So, but then the one that really shocked us most is the Lekki shooting. And then I'm about to discuss that because I know that there were just so many issues there. And, okay, because our Vice Marshal is not here, I think I'm going to ask Barrister Phillip. media, more specifically, the role of disinformation in distorting the facts about the Lekki shooting? I can put it into perspective for you. Now, the night of the shooting, there were so many pictures that came out, there were so many videos. And then, later on, some people could prove that those videos or pictures were fake. And then, there's an element that could use those same pictures to try to discredit the old Lekki incident. So can you tell us about the role of social media in this whole thing, particularly in regards to the
Just like Marshal said, social media is powerful and it's very beneficial for us, not just in politics, in business, in leadership, everywhere. And it's sad that people would also use something so beautiful, so beneficial for negative purposes. We all are shocked. We were shocked. You know, it's amazing that Lekki 20 shooting would happen. I still can't recover from the pain of that night. And I think beyond everything, when it comes to leadership in a country or among people, beyond where I'm going to choose to be, whether it's in the office or not, we've always start talking about competence and fluency, ability to communicate, and all of that potentials or qualities of leadership that we talk about. I think before we talk about all that, we should talk about conscience, which I think is very absent in our leadership. People do not have conscience. People do not have conscience. I was in my colleague's office, it's Fallon and Fallon's chambers. We were there and we brought up the same issue, you know, and there's one of them who's a senior lawyer, he's a body politician. And I was shocked. You know, there are some things that just blow your mind. You can't imagine. Are you human? Do you guys lose your humanity when it comes to issues like this? Is it a requirement for politics in Nigeria that you should not be human? So we started with the issue of whether anybody died at all. And later, I didn't believe it. And so what we're dealing with in Nigeria is not even about whether young people should do or not. We're talking about sensible people. Because I'm seeing very senseless young people, very wicked young people amongst us. You guys not the fault. So it's not about whether he's a old person. He was very categorical. He said nobody died. He said nobody died. So of course, the first thing is for me to get pictures from. He said, look, these pictures were doctor. This picture were doctor. Nobody has come out to claim that his family or his brother or his son. I showed him all manners of missing photos of people said they were looking for their loved ones. You know, but he insisted that those things were not true in the face of overwhelming evidence. So I think whether we want to believe it or not, people always choose where they want to stand. If I want to say nobody died already, I would say that. I was a bit more dramatic the next morning of the shooting. You know, when I saw the pictures of the governor visiting the hospitals to see, I was ranting that why did they allow me enter? Why? What is he doing? Where was he yesterday night when they were shooting at him? Why would you shoot at me in the night and check me up? If I were on the protest, I would have used it against him. I would not have. You should not check us. Don't check us. Stay outside. Don't check us. Don't kill us and check us. So we definitely will choose where we want to stand. Because people will tell lies. People say this is not true. The videos are doctors. Of course, we know that people come to doctors. Yes. But they were killings on that night, and we know it. We know it. I may not be able to point to this is my brother who was killed, but there were people, real family members who went through real pain, who lost real loved ones on that night. So I think we should educate ourselves. Me, I will come from the point of conscience first. Conscience. The same thing happened when Chibok was kidnapped. It's a lie, 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 it's a lie. And that's how we lost. There are a lot of them that still are still in captivity today. Yes. So I think humanity should be first. Before you talk about leadership, as even as young people, we must learn first to be human, to check, is this thing true? And even if I'm going to err, I think it's better for me to err and on the side of sympathy and empathy before I err on the side of logic. You know, and thank God for the CNN investigative video who came out. I think that was 3 or 4 days ago. I heard our line manager say that they're going to sound shop this year. But the truth is that beyond people that, of course, there will be lies on social media, but we know the truth. It's absolutely impossible for people to be shot. If you saw the crowd, the last picture they took that night, it is impossible for them to have been shooting at those people if the people that were injured is a strong tendency that they could have died that night, whether there was any evidence or not. I think that's what I will start.
Thank you very much. Yeah. So I've been reminded that we have less than 15 minutes to round up the session so that we can receive questions, especially for the general. But I have one of mine.
Yes.
Now there's a story, right? There's a story that on the 20th of October, while protesters were at toll gates, initially the curfew was for 4 p.m. but later it was extended to 9 p.m. But there's a story that the soldiers came past 6 and started shooting until after 8 o'clock. Now, that is just one story. And so many people died, of course. Like, soldiers shot, and people died, and people ran into the lagoon and they died. Now, I have another different story. The first story is the military was not invited. This was said by Governor Obierika. The second one was the military said the videos that we saw, they were all doctored. The third one is the people we saw in the videos, they were hoodlums that shot at the protesters, hoodlums in army uniform. And the fourth one is military was present, but they were invited by but they did not shoot. And the latest version we have now is the military was present, the shots, but they were blank bullets. Now, those 5 points I just gave now, they were from one story. So you realize that there is a single story and there are multiple versions from the opposition. Now, my background of international security wants me to ask you, why even bring the military in the first place? Why bring the military for an internal issue? Military, as far as I know, is there for external threats, national security threats. Are they saying that the protest is a national threat?
Thank you very much for that question. As somebody who commanded a division in the Nigerian Air Force, the maneuvering command, I can tell you we have procedure for handing over and taking over from the police in the civil military relations. I was one of those chosen to go around the Federal Federation to talk to people during the transition to civil. We have to do certain things that are contained in the book, and like I told you, there has been impunity everywhere, both by the common man on the street and the people who are leading us. Impunity, both from the illicit and illicit power. Like somebody who put in some 36 years of service in the Air Force, I cannot accept, he said, and I said. That's why I don't want to give a direct answer to this. Let us wait for the investigating panel to bring up. Do you know that in some countries, when there is a revolution, the government will start a counter-revolution? You don't know that? So people will be paid to counter this. So I don't want to speculate. I don't want to live on speculation. Let us wait till the panels settle. Find out.
So do you think that the process should have had an end game?
Okay, I'll try and repeat what I think I heard you say. Okay. Because the connection was really breaking.
Okay, that's fine. So my question to you
is... Was your question around whether or not you thought the demonstration should have stopped when the government made a promise to disband SARS? Was that the question?
The question is, should there have been like pauses in between for the government to meet the demands of the protest? So not stop permanently, but like it was continuous for like 14 days. So within those 14 days, should there have been some pauses for government to meet the demands?
Right. Okay. I hear you. Should demonstrations have paused? Or the protest, rather, I think I've been a protest. It's not an interesting question, but I think the reason why the demonstrations started and the reasons why they continue have to be understood to sort of determine whether or not a pause would have made a difference or not. Now, we all know that the agitation against SARS did not start in October 2020. So there was clearly a verifiable and warranted distrust of the announcement that was made by the government that it was going to be banned. And I think perhaps a reasonable question would be, should government have shown its good faith in its announcement by coming up with some very clear policies and clear plans as to what it is going to do going forward. And perhaps the government could have eased tension in the policies by going beyond just announcing the disbanding of SARS by the IGP to perhaps the president coming on much earlier to speak to and engage on the subject. We do know that, for instance, in the Lagos State government at the time, and please, I know what people feel about the shooting that happened in Lekki, that means there was so much to engage. We know that the Lagos State governor went to speak to the president, and we know how people felt about some of the, how shall I say, the non-verbal communication from the president when the Lagos governor spoke to him about some of the ways in which they wanted to take account of some of the demands that were being made by the youth. So do I think that a pause would have made a difference? I don't think so. And we all know that social movements need momentum. But when you stop that momentum, more often than not, you lose, if you like, some of the energy behind that movement. Rather, I think the bigger question is, why did something that started as a really peaceful movement become quite disruptive and violent? And I think we all know that there are lots of theories out there as to who was instigating some of these, and it will create an environment in which the protest will become demonized and become the basis for which government will act in a violent manner. And that tactic by the Nigerian government is not dissimilar to previous tactics the Nigerian government or governments in other countries have employed in these sorts of instances. I think what is truly troubling and what is worrying for somebody like me who grew up in the military dictatorship in Nigeria is that this happens not in the military dictatorships, but that it happened in a democracy. And that, I think, in and of itself raises huge concern. That's what I think, honestly.
Because during the ENDSARS protest, I kept on thinking, what's next? What's the strategy? What's the end goal? So I'm very happy that forums like this are happening, because sometimes Nigerians seem to be very forgetful, and it's almost like a good coping mechanism. When something bad happens, we just use humor, we laugh about it, and we just forget about it. So I'm very happy that, and maybe people had to die, to be honest, who to take it seriously. I know it might sound, the type of insensitive, but in a way, I think it just showed us the gravity. And he's right that these things have been happening since, massacres happen in Nigeria every day, extrajudicial killing, so it didn't start today. Why, I like the question she asked, because we need to be solutions minded. We've complained about the problem, we all know what the issues are. So that's why sometimes I'm tired of talking about the problem. I'm just thinking, what is the solution, what is next? Number one, I think that we need to educate ourselves and then educate others. All through, there's a possibility that even if we're in government don't know what happened on that day, some people in government, it's possible that maybe the president doesn't even know what happened that day, like who gave the order. It's possible. things are so upside down in Nigeria. Things don't work the way they're supposed to work. I mean, I work with a lot of government agencies. I know what goes on. Things are decided and written before you even go through the process. Everything is already, So much is happening that shouldn't be happening. There's so much impunity, ineptitude, So we really need to go back to the drawing board. So we need to educate ourselves. The police and the military, they don't even know what their job description is. See what they don't know, they should know what they don't know. If they send them there, maybe they just thought they send them there to shoot. Because that's what they're used to. Even COVID enforcement, sorry to digress a bit, someone told me, someone that owns a restaurant, a Lebanese guy, and he was like, they notice that these people, they just come, they calm down. They don't even know why they are sent. They don't know what they're supposed to look out for. So most times you're dealing with very ignorant people. There's so much ignorance. That's why I'm saying that we need to educate ourselves and educate others, because knowledge is power. Number 2, we need to get involved. But you have to educate yourself first and gain the capacity before you get involved. I don't believe that because you're young, you should be president. There's so many young Yahoo boys. There's so many young people so I won't just vote for you because you're young. You need to have the capacity. You need to work on your mind, your intellect and everything, and then we need to get involved. Every young person should have their PVC number 1, and then get involved in the political party. Because if you're not in the political party, right, you don't even have. That's why it's determined. So if PDP and APC have chosen their primary, their candidates at primaries, you can be left with 2 bad eggs. So if you get involved in the primaries in numbers, then you can get better candidates from even the beginning. So everybody needs to get involved in the political process. It's very important. So for me, those are the 2 critical things that we have to do. We need to change the mindset. It's not just government. People should stop pointing fingers. Oh, government does, government does. Nigerians too have issues. The populace, and I keep talking about the 90%. Give somebody your business to run. Come back tomorrow. They've stolen half of your things. Corruption has gotten into the blood, the bone marrow. So, we are pointing fingers, replace everybody in government, the same thing will happen. Everybody went there to solve the problem. I don't think everybody went there not to, but the society has decayed. So, we need to change ourselves and we need to try and change others. So for me, those are the 2 things I would say. Educate yourself, change your mindset. Let us promote integrity, values, morals. Let us stand for what is right. Let us forget about instant gratification. Everybody wants to enter government to hammer. Every young person you tell, say, oh, let me enter and hammer. Then after I finish hammering, then we can now change Nigeria. So, I mean, these are just 2 ways. We need to take the bad eggs out. If the good eggs don't get involved, things will never change. So those are my 2, I think, final comments. I don't know if there's any other.
Thank you very much. Marshal, Phillip, would you like to respond?
Well, on the contrary, talking about the protests, I was an active adept supporter of the protests from the beginning to the end. I thought that we shouldn't, a lot of people thought that we should have stopped at the point, but I also felt that they played the same game they played our fathers. The game of secluding people, bribing off some people, and infiltrating the protests. So at the point where a lot of issues about who is feminists, who is pushing a particular agenda, we know we have those issues amongst ourselves, and we all have to say, come, let's focus on what we are fighting. I think that the government was the reason why the protest didn't end the way when it should have ended. For instance, I thought that the president should have sacked the IG. If all I can do is to convert 10 talks, I would have done my own best. If all I can do is to convert 20 talks, but if I can get 20 people to convert 20 talks, 100 people to convert 20, 200, 2,000, 20,000, maybe we will stop to 50,000, 100,000 talks. We know where they are. Language to language. My brother, you can speak, I will speak to people who speak my language, and we can begin to convince because they are going to use the weapons of token in 2023. So whether or not we get our PVCs, we still will not be able to. But look, we all know that it's frustrating to live in Nigeria. We know this. If you join you will not win the promise. Join PDP and try to win the promise. Let's say I'm going to win it. So if I say I'm going to join it, if I'm going to join APC for instance, can you kill me? They can kill me for even thinking. I'm telling you, we know these things. I don't have the money, I don't have the funds for it, I don't have the support for it, I don't have the charm for it, I don't have the voodoo for it. They kill people every day. They killed my friend, Pastor Ben. He Yeah, for this, just cheap AMAC, INEC election. They'll kill them cheap. And most of the killings that we have from the days of Fushon Williams to the days of Bola Ige, who has been held accountable for any political murder in this country? They have killed from the days of Dele Giwa. They have been killing people. Nobody has been convicted. Nobody has gone to prison. Nobody has been held accountable for any death in this country. So who's going to risk their life? Is it me? No. So we know this, that it's not just about that. We must start by talking from where we are. Who am I going to change? Who am I going to educate? Who am I going to talk to? Who is that person that doesn't know what it is to be in the country? How can I help? How can I contribute my own quota? Because the truth is that this, and that's one like Yabi, is that it's not just an environment. I'm sorry if I found it. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
In my governor's wife.
I'm very embarrassed. So how are we going to do it? Yes, my friend, Ole is a politician. How do we get to the top? How do we win the party? Look at Ambode in Lagos. Look at how Tinubu single-handedly shrunk his political ambition single-handedly. So if Ambode did great, and we knew he did great in Lagos, and yet couldn't win, a sitting governor could not win the primaries. I never even did someone who before that election. I didn't know it. I was there before. So a nameless entity would win primaries against a sitting governor. Because they are performing sitting governor.
People can get involved in different ways. So people might get involved by educating and sensitization, which I mentioned. Some people might get involved by joining politics. If there are no good options, there will be nobody to vote for. Some people are lucky. It's the person who is there that will get in. Some people have the means, they have the money, and they can do it. But we need a critical mass. We need to go in number, in volume, because we are the population, we are the majority. So that's just what I wanted to clarify. There's so many ways of doing it. You might not even have to get it, but you can be behind the scenes, you can fund, you can do so many things. But the aim is that we cannot just sit by the sidelines and keep complaining. We must all be part of the solution. That's what I wanted to say. Thank you.
So, thanks for joining us, Professor. I don't know if you got the last question. Did you get the last question from our audience?
The last question?
Yeah, did you get the question from the audience?
Was it what to do with how do we contribute?
Yes. And then, before you answer it, is there anyone that has another question for? Okay, all right. Please, you can go ahead.
Right, okay, how do we contribute? What really made me engage with this ENDSARS was that it was being driven by the youth. I'm a professor and I am one of the old people that you point fingers at, but thankfully I've been in academia, and so I've been among the youth. And I've always said that if anything is going to happen, if anything is going to change, it's going to have to start with the youth. And I've liked some of the contributions that have come from amongst yourself, one of which is, it's got to start with you. Nothing is going to change unless we as individuals begin to critically evaluate what the issues are with Nigeria and what we can do to make a difference. And the things that we individually can do to make a difference may seem small. But if we all do these simple individual things, we will get to the point that I think Chinenye was saying about a critical mass. We then get to a critical mass. And what do I mean by little things? I think that from the very bottom, and I see this when I talk to my young Nigerian friends all the time, that somehow the rot in the system has eaten into every single cell. And so that things that we used to take for granted in my generation, things that we thought we all had a common understanding about, that this was wrong, I begin to find that amongst Nigerians, it's no longer believed to be wrong. It is the way to go. And if you are not thinking in that way, somehow there is something wrong with you. You are slow. You know, you've got to be smart. You know, you've got to get yours first. You know, and I think as the youth, we need to begin to rethink our minds. And somebody like me in the diaspora, one of the things I've been doing educating Nigerian youth is ensuring that we create the frameworks, the platforms, the opportunities for us to discuss these issues again. I tell my Nigerian students, let's go back and begin to read African Writers Series. Because one of the things I find a lot of Nigerians think is this is who we are. We are a corrupt people. You know, and I challenge that all the time. I say, no, we are not a corrupt people. I grew up as a village, well, I grew up in the village. I grew up at a time when somebody would leave their wares out there, bananas, plantains, whatever, and you would go, you would take what you want, and leave the amount of money that you are meant to pay for that. I grew up in a village in which most houses did not have doors. They had mats over the doors. No one came in and raped anybody. No one came in and killed anybody. So I think the first thing we should understand that who we are now, or who we seem to be, is not who we are. Something has happened. There has been an intervention that has created the social structure that we have that seems to make us believe that we are a corrupt people, that we are a violent people, that we are a people who do not care about one another. And I think one of the things that showed was that we don't care about one another. All of the social media platforms were used to help one another, support one another. People were buying food for one another. I think we need to believe in the goodness of Nigeria and have hope for Nigeria. Because I think once we believe that we can do this, then that begins to germinate, hope begins to germinate. And one of the things I tell my students, you've got to be a student of history. I read about the histories of the places that we aspire to. And I tell them not very long ago, these same things, the contestations, the debates we're having now in Nigeria, were had in those same countries as well. Can you all still hear me?
Yes.
It's just because I've got like this still camera in front of me and I'm not quite sure if you can. You know, if you call, I live in the UK currently, and if you look at UK history, you will find these things debate, this is contestation after 70 years ago, maybe 80 years ago. Some of you will tell me, oh yes, it's good one. But remember, when there are debates about nation of ENDSARS, the UK nation has over 300 years of history. We are building. People tell me, oh, but you know, in this UK, they really care about the really poor people and whatever. And I say, listen, Buckingham Palace was built at a time when you had the poorest of the poor. I'm sure a lot of you read Oliver Twist. You know, you heard about the Lords and you heard about the people or the urchins, the street urchins. So, the contestation we are having in Nigeria is not unique to us. That is not to say let's live in it, but I say that because it's really important that we understand that so that we can have hope. Because I think that the biggest battle we have is that we lose hope. And when we lose hope, everybody says, look, don't worry, because Nigeria will never change. But when you get your opportunity, just get your own. And my challenge is, no, Nigeria can. We are still a very, very young nation. So I say, look back to the history of Nigeria. Look at where we are now. Look at where we started from. We have been through our civil war. We have been through our military dictatorships. At least we are at a point now where I'm sure your generation is not thinking that somebody is going to come and take power by force from the military. In my generation, that was the order of the day. So we moved. We have moved. And we will begin to move. We're going to make those progress step by step, slowly. We're going to have to use the tools that we have. And I was very interested in the discussion happening earlier on about social media. We have the advantage now that we can begin to beam light and shine light in areas that previously were quite opaque because we've got social media and because we can expose. And the youth has to lead in that. Yes, there is something I believe in social movements. I believe that no country has moved forward without some form of, wrestling like we are doing at the moment. Whether you think of the UK, whether you think of the French Revolution, whether you think of the US, whether you think of South Africa, whether you think of Namibia, in whichever world, you will find that in China you're having those as well. So I think that is part and parcel of the process of democratization. I think where we need to be going now is to begin to build the institutions that will ensure that we have good governance, that we are able to hold people accountable. And that is where your voice counts. Because again, Nigeria is a country with over 60% of its population being under 24. If we galvanize the strength of the youth in the electorate, and those in power begin to realize that they are accountable to the people, that the people have the power to vote them out if they're not doing what they need to. I think change will begin to come slowly. I don't expect change to come up overnight, but start with you, educate you, make sure that you are able to bring yourself to a place where you can be part of this movement. Secondly, have hope. Study history. Believe in Nigeria, believe in yourself. And thirdly, work to ensure that our political structures becomes embedded, that people understand that democracy is really about them and that the people have power. And I think if we can do those things little by little, we will get there. I think I'll stop here. I've talked quite a lot. I don't want to
Barrister Chinenye, Barrister Phillip for joining our session, and this will, I'm going to bring this in the hands of, to close the panel, and I'll hand over to Mr. Dana. Thank
you. Today was a really wonderful session. Especially thank you, Professor, because despite the fact that we're having really serious internet issues, you stayed with us to the end. You know, I'm sorry for all the inconvenience, but thank you very much. I want to thank Pastor Phillip. Thank you very much for making it. I understand that you had to be somewhere before you came. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Let us put our hands for our Thank you very much. I want to also just put your hands together for yourselves. We're the ones that made this program a success. Thank you very much. The discussions that we're having here today, or that we've had here today, it doesn't end yet. It continues. We've said that the professor has told us, have hope. And when you have hope, hope is what drives you to keep fighting. I don't think at this point any of us should give up and say, oh, after the last massacre or shooting, after the last shooting, that we should rest, we should go out, we should give up on the country, let's get out of the country. No, because if you go out, the country will still remain. The whole 140 million of us will all leave the country. So if you fight, you're not just fighting for yourself, you're fighting for the kids, you're fighting for the people who can't live, you're fighting for yourself too, because when you go out there, you spread that as what? In Nigeria. And the stigma associated with Nigeria as a corrupt country in quotes will also be associated with you, and you'll be deep. Of course, I'm sure many of us, himself in particular, that's Obuche, has had a particular experience at the airport, where because of the fact that it was Nigeria, was treated in a certain unfair way. So please, the fight continues. As we come to the close of the session, on your way out, there's refreshment for everybody. But please don't forget, this session was what? Unearthing the what? Issues. We're having another session talking about the same ENDSARS issue on December 5th. Then we're going to be specifically talking about practical solutions. We're not just going, we don't really rush through the solutions and just quickly scan through all of that. But then we're going to talk about the practical solutions, and then we will all see ways in which we can contribute to ENDSARS. Like the fact that Pastor Phillip said something about educating those close to him. We have lots of our Marjories around us. Just in some Marjories, they have a story. And their story is not nice. They have a story of neglect, they have a story of pain. So please, I know it's very easy at this point to look at them like, oh, these are the bad guys. We were in the South, we have sense, we have. Let us not look at them like that. Let us look at them like fellow Nigerians who they are also victims in another way, like they are. But once again, I want to tell us, thank you very much. Let us rise up as we close with the national anthem. very much. Good night, everyone.
You